Hey sports fan, today's just gonna be my March wrap up. Quick, simple, easy peasy lemon squeezy. Let's get into it. First thing I finished in March was The Third Wife of Faraday House by B.R. Myers. I actually enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would. I don't know why, but I got it in my head that I wasn't going to enjoy this from like the first chapter because I found the main character to be exactly how she's supposed to be, kind of naive and annoying. But as the book goes on, we get a better idea of her real personality, her perseverance, why she is the way that she is, and it starts to make a lot more sense in the context of the story for why she seems so kind of naive and I hesitate to say dumb because she's not dumb, but she kind of lives in a fantasy, and it does make more sense the further that you read, the more that we get to know her character. I neglected to tell you what this is about. The Third Wife of Faraday House is about a young woman named Emmeline. Her foster parents have decided that she is of a marriageable age and they're trying to make a good match for her. They don't know that she's already in love with somebody. And when that falls apart, she has to take the only match that will have her. And she's sent off to be married to an older man who actually has already had two wives come and go, named Captain Graves. When she gets to Faraday House, she finds out that Captain Graves' second wife is not actually dead yet. And there's kind of a lot of mystery surrounding the death of the first wife, the illness of the second wife, and what the heck is going on in this super weird, creepy gothic house. I was checking my phone because I thought that I took notes on this book, but I guess I didn't. So I'm gonna have to just draw from my memory and try to tell you guys my thoughts and feelings. There's actually a lot to like about this book. Emmeline grows on you like a fungus. She starts off kind of irritating and sort of like fanciful. She has all these imagined ideas of what her life is going to be like or what it should be like. And it feels a little bit immature, a little bit silly. But as we get to know her, it does make more sense. And like I said, she does grow on you. The other characters in this book are so weird and creepy, and they're great. I love it. Like Captain Graves, you briefly feel sympathetic towards Captain Graves because it seems like he just wants a wife and he wants to have kids and have a family and a home. But then he'll have a weird, aggressive, violent outburst, and you don't feel sympathetic towards him anymore. Now you're suspicious of him. Faraday House is managed by three people, a husband and wife pair who are like the groundskeeper, the maid, the cook, they're everything, and then one single other maidservant who is supposed to specifically be for the dying wife. And these three are so weird. They're kind of rude and mean. They're overly disrespectful towards Emmeline, and she just sort of takes it because she thinks it's what she deserves. But us as the reader, we are like, I can't wait to see these people get pushed down a flight of stairs because they're awful and they're creepy. Additionally, there is a Catholic priest who comes to and from the island pretty frequently, and he comes because the second wife is probably going to die at any moment. She wants to make sure that there's a priest there to see her through and perform her last rites, things like that. So he comes and goes, and let me be honest with you, I was so suspicious of the priest for the entirety of this book. I felt like he was up to something. I felt like he knew more than he was saying, and I just felt like he couldn't be trusted. I don't know if that's my suspicious mind or if it was a result of the writing and the storytelling, but that is how I felt. I did enjoy the mystery in this book a lot, even though aspects of it were very, very predictable. What and who was kind of obvious, but the why wasn't quite there. And in the end, when the big reveal happens, it felt a little bit anticlimactic because it felt almost too simple. The main like climax scene of the book did feel a little bit too cinematic. I think that's intentional. I think that's what Myers was going for. It did kind of feel like watching a gothic horror play out. What is that movie? Like Crimson Peak, where the end is very cinematic. It felt very much like that. I think that was intentional, so I'm not holding it against the book necessarily. It just wasn't to my tastes. I don't need my books to feel like movies. Overall, I gave this book a 3-star rating. I gave it a 4 on the vibes and a 3 on the writing because I do wish that the writing had been just a little bit stronger. I would definitely recommend this if you enjoy things like Crimson Peak or Rebecca. This might be up your alley, and I probably wouldn't reread this. I just don't see myself rereading it, although I did enjoy it. Next up in March, I read Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. Again, this one kind of surprised me. I did not expect to like this book as much as I did. I thought that this book was going to be somewhere between a gothic thriller type and a fantasy romance type, and really it's not either of those things. There is a house, it is weird, and there is fantasy, and there is kind of a thriller or even horror aspect, and there is a romance. But I wouldn't call this gothic, and I wouldn't call this a fantasy romance either. I don't really know what to call this. Maybe somewhere between magical realism or even speculative fiction? I don't know, but I really enjoyed it. This book is about a young woman named Opal who is just doing her absolute best. She is skating by the skin of her teeth, trying to take care of her younger brother. She's dropped out of high school. She works a crappy job at Tractor Supply. They live in a motel. She is just trying to do her absolute best to make some kind of life for her younger brother. She kind of stumbles into the opportunity to work in this house called Starling House that is in the town she lives in. Starling House has a very strange reputation in her town. It has a strange, creepy, misunderstood history. There are about 1 million stories within the town of what the heck is going on with Starling House, and all of them are different and none of them are really true. But Opal gets the opportunity to work here. She's going to earn a ton of money just to clean this house and hang out with this weird guy who lives there, and antics ensue from there. I really can't tell you a lot more about this book without spoiling it because I feel like everything that happens is kind of a surprise. Every piece of information that you learn about the people in this house is like a little breadcrumb that you get to savor while you're reading the book. And I don't want to ruin that for you. I really want people to read this. I really enjoyed it. One of my favorite aspects of this book was the portrayal of 2 young people trying to get by on next to nothing. No resources, no education, no real understanding of how to make it in this world. Some of those aspects really resonated with me because of my own personal experiences as a young person. I don't want to go into it too much, but I have firsthand experience with living in a motel, and I think that the way that it's described in this book is done so well. I could really put myself in Opal's mindset because I had been there before in my life. It felt very real to read about her experiences, how she views the world and how she feels viewed by people around her, the things that she's willing to do, the things that she's willing to give up. I also really loved the relationship between Opal and her brother and the retrospective relationship between Opal and their mother. I really enjoyed the familial relationships and how that was explored. I thought that it was realistic, but also in some ways kind of idealized. Not in a bad way, that's just how it felt while I was reading it. One of my favorite parts of this book is that we get, I think, 4, maybe more, individual stories of Starling House and its original inhabitant. And each of the stories is so different depending on the perspective of the person telling it, but they're also similar. They're all so far and close to the true story. I really liked that aspect. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It made it kind of mysterious, and you as the reader are trying to pick and choose what pieces of information we're being given that are accurate and what pieces might be skewed by time and word of mouth and how stories get translated throughout the years. I gave this book a 4 overall. I gave it a 5 on vibes and just how much I enjoyed the story, but a 4 on the writing. There were a couple of aspects of the writing that I just didn't like very much, and they were very, very small. But for example, there's a part where Opal compares herself to a possum, not an opossum, a possum, which only live in Australia. But this book takes place in the United States. And you might think, well, maybe Opal just knows about possums. Yeah, maybe, but she's not educated. She's not traditionally educated. So pulling such an obscure kind of random animal reference out of her butt felt kind of like glaringly out of place to me. My husband said that I was making too big of a deal out of it. I think he's right. I did make too big of a deal out of it. It made me pause. And I think that anything that makes you pause and come out of the story is a failure of the writing. So there were a couple of little things here and there that just gave me pause and kind of took me out of the story. And that is just the reality of writing books. No one is a perfect author. It's fine. I still really enjoyed this book. Don't take that as me trying to drag the author. This book is really good and I really enjoyed it. I would highly recommend it, and honestly, I'd probably reread it. I'd need to give myself some time to forget certain parts so that it would be like experiencing them again for the first time. But this is definitely a reread. Next up in March, I read Dreams of the Dying by Nicholas Litzau. This one is breaking the trend. I did not enjoy this book. I didn't enjoy the story. I didn't enjoy the writing. I didn't enjoy the characters or the setting. There was almost nothing positive about this experience for me. I gave this book an overall 2-star rating. I gave it a 2 on vibes and a 3 on technical skill. I would not recommend this to anybody. I just don't think it's worth your time, and I definitely will never reread it. I know that a lot of people really like this book, and that's great for them. I'm happy for them. I did not. This book is, I think, 700 pages long, and it's about 200 pages too long. One of my biggest complaints about this book is that it goes on for like probably 150 pages after the end of the story. So the end of the main conflict happens at about 80%. And then the following 20% of this book, the final 20% of this book, is just kind of the ramblings of a madman. I actually was leaning towards a 3-star rating on this book. By the time that I got to about 80%, I thought, okay, this is a 3-star book. It's fine. I didn't love it, but it's not that bad. Then it just kept going, and it just kept getting worse and worse and less enjoyable and less meaningful, and kind of just felt like a waste of my time. By the end of the book, I found myself asking, what was the point of any of this? So the main plot happens, and it is really propelling the story forward. The characters feel like they exist to move Jaspar into certain situations. The other characters felt very flat. They felt like they had no point, no purpose. Anyway, the main plot happens and is resolved. And most of the people involved in the main plot are not good people. When the story resolves, we think that the worst of these people are punished. Then the book keeps going, and we find out that they weren't punished, and they're actually going to get to just keep living their lives and doing whatever they want to do. That to me was so incredibly frustrating because it made me feel like there was no point to everything that I had just read. Nothing that happened mattered because there was no consequence. I don't know if this is intentional, but it feels like all of the women in the book are punished for being women. It feels like they're punished for not being bad people in a way. There are three main characters who are women. One of them dies, and in kind of a horrible way. Like the things that happen to her are terrible, and her only mistake was kindness and being manipulated into falling in love with the wrong person. Another woman has what I think is possibly a fate worse than death, and her only mistake was falling in love with the wrong person. And then the woman who kind of gets off the easiest is Lycia, but she still doesn't have a good time. Bad things happen to her. She has some really traumatic, horrible experiences, and her only mistake was being kind. She didn't do anything to deserve the things that happened to her. None of these women did anything to deserve what happened to them. I don't know if that was intentional. I don't know if I was supposed to notice that or if it was, or if it's just a coincidence, but it was something that I really didn't like. I have to discuss the main character, Jespar, and I have to discuss how Jespar is not just a horrible person, which he is. Jespar is a terrible person. He is horrible. But also, he is a terrible representation of depression and PTSD. I saw a lot of people talk about this book as good representation of mental health. I wanted to see what people took away from this that made them enjoy it so much more than I did. And a lot of people said that they really identified with Jespar and that they felt like they were seen in their mental health or their depression by this character. Maybe that's not the type of depression that I've experienced. I've experienced depression. I have anxiety. I have struggled, like most people, with feelings of self-doubt and even self-hatred. How do I say this? The type of depression that Jespar personifies feels like the sort of depression experienced by 14 and 15-year-olds. It felt very immature. It felt very childish. It felt very selfish. Jespar spends a lot of time internally talking about what a bad person he is, but he never stops being a bad person to other people. He does horrible things to people and then cries about it to himself, but never resolves what he did. He doesn't apologize to people for what he's done. Not really. It's very manipulative. I think more than anything, Jespar is a narcissist because he goes to apologize, but instead of actually apologizing, he kind of guilt trips people into feeling bad for him. It works on the female character because she's sympathetic towards him and she does like him and care about him. This is a little bit of a spoiler, so if you want to avoid spoilers, maybe click away, jump forward like a minute into the video. But something that Jespar does very specifically that I think illustrates my point is that he's having a physical relationship with a woman and they both agree that it's just a physical relationship. After a little bit of time, the woman comes to him and she says, I actually really care about you. I'm developing deep feelings for you. I would like to be exclusive with you. She is very clear when she says this to him that she only wants to be exclusive with him if it's something that he also wants. She does not want him to do this because she wants it. She wants him to do it because he wants it. And he agrees. He says, yeah, great, let's be exclusive. She makes an important point that she's really putting herself out here. She's putting her heart in his hands and she's trusting him. So if for any reason this isn't going to work for him, to please just come to her, tell her, be honest. Fast forward like 10 minutes into this relationship, Jaspar has a, to be fair, truly terrifying waking nightmare that affects how he sees this woman. He physically, literally runs away in the night, and he runs into another one of their party members, a young man. He sits down and has a conversation with this young man, and internally, Jaspar is like, oh, this guy is he's so kind. I feel myself like kind of attracted to him, but I made this promise to this other woman. And then Jaspar goes ahead and kisses the guy, and they make out. Jaspar doesn't tell the guy until after they've made out that he's actually exclusive with this woman. The guy is like, he's very young and naive, and he's a little bit upset, but he's also confused. And Jaspar is like, I have to break it off with this woman. So Jaspar does go and he does break it off with her. At least he does that face to face. But then later in the story, he also abandons that man in a truly horrible, gross, bad person kind of way. I think that that's a really good metric for who Jaspar is as a person. He's a bad person. He agreed to be exclusive with someone and then betrayed their trust, to be with somebody else and then betrayed that person's trust as well. Jaspar just doesn't care about other people. He only cares about himself. He spends all of his time bitch pissing and moaning about how he's so traumatized and he's so broken inside, instead of just not being a shitty person. I'm sorry I went on such a rant. I just really did not like this character. I found him deplorable. My husband and I read this at the same time, and he didn't hate it as much as I did, but he also was like, I don't want to read any more about this guy because he's such a bad person. And I felt validated because I came out of this book thinking, what a horrible, horrible person. I do not want to read about him. Beyond Jaspar's terrible character and all of the other characters and the plot being kind of weird, I felt like the world was a world that I was supposed to already understand, even though this is the first book in a series. I'm a little bit confused on this, so correct me if I'm wrong. But what I read is that the author of this book is also the author of a non-canon, like, extended storyline of Elder Scrolls. Some people say that it is, and some people say that it isn't, supposed to take place in the Elder Scrolls world with the names of places and people changed. I don't know if that's true, but it kind of tracks because it felt like I was supposed to already know about these places, and I didn't. And there wasn't a lot of exposition to explain it to me. Finding out that this author wrote parts of a video game definitely tracks, because the book is written kind of like a video game, kind of like convoluted and dramatic and like over the top, and everything is supposed to be so deep. Oh, that's another complaint I have about Jaspar's character. I'm so sorry. Jaspar's character gets into these long-winded, rambling, convoluted conversations about kind of like philosophy, where he sort of like opens it up like a conversation, but really what it is a lecture where he's going to tell you you're wrong and here's why. For example, there's a conversation between Jaspar and Lycia where Lycia says that people who have a lot of money, these extremely rich people, should do more for the people who have less. And Jaspar says, well, that's not true. That's irrational because everybody has more than somebody. And she says, yes, everybody has more than somebody, but people who have more than everybody should do more. Jaspar says, this makes me so mad. He says to Lycia, well, you have a really nice pair of boots. You have a very nice, expensive pair of boots. You should sell those boots for $200. You should buy yourself a $20 pair of boots and then give the other $180 away. if you're such a good person and if you think that people who have more should do more. He tells her that. And because she's a character who exists only to sit at the feet of Jaspar, she kind of just lets him say that and doesn't continue to argue with him. But any reasonable person would say that Lycia already does more as somebody who is a healer who works for free. So her having a more expensive pair of boots enables her to travel to the people who need her services, and she provides that for free. She's already doing more, which kind of defeats his entire argument and makes her point. But because the book is supposed to tell us that Jaspar is so fucking smart and special and such a unique snowflake, she doesn't say any of that, and we're just left to believe that Jaspar won that argument and that he's right. The philosophical aspects were exhausting because, like I said, Jaspar is a 14-year-old boy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm sorry, I'm so heated about this because I didn't like him so much. There's even a part towards the end of the book where if you lasted to the end of the book, you've read like 600 pages of Jaspar just bitching constantly about how sad he is, how hard things are for him, how nobody understands him and he can't explain himself. The narrator has the absolute audacity to say Jaspar loathed self-pity. Loathed? Brother, you spelled loved wrong. Jaspar loves self-pity. He wallows in it. That is his entire life. He is a pig rolling in the mud of self-pity. Okay, I can't rant about this book anymore. I really disliked it. No, I gave this book a 2 stars. I gave it a 2 on vibes and storytelling and a 3 on technical ability because I do think that the writing wasn't technically bad. I just think everything about the story was bad. And to calm down. Finally, the last thing I read in March was And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. This was a blast. I really enjoyed this. It was so much fun. And Then There Were None is about 10 people who are called to a mysterious island for various reasons by different people. When they get there, they all start to kind of get picked off one by one. It creates a sense of tension and unease. Everyone could be the killer and everyone thinks everybody else is the killer. It's super mysterious. It's a really fun time. I have never read a book like this before. I don't really read mystery, I don't read whodunit, and I've never read Agatha Christie, so this was a delight. It was a really fun time. This was very easy to read. The way that it's written is perfect for the type of story it is. It is so straight to the point. You still get all of the feelings of anxiety and suspicion and mistrust and tension without the writing just kind of droning on or being unnecessarily flowery. It's very short, sweet, to the point. It's written very well for the type of story that it's telling. At first, I thought it was going to be hard for me to keep track of the characters, but as the book goes on, you do get a really good feel for each individual character. Every time you think you know who the killer is, they die. I don't know if she did that on purpose, if she led us to think it was a certain person just to kill that person off, but that is what happened to me. I really liked the mystery. I've never read a mystery like this, so maybe I'm just gushing over something that everybody else is familiar with, but this is entirely new to me. This was such a fun time. I definitely want to read more Agatha Christie. So if anyone has recommendations of Christie's best works to read, let me know because I don't want to read her entire body of work, but I would like to read some more of this type of book. I gave this an overall 4-star rating. I gave it a 4 on vibes and storytelling and a 5 on technical skill. The reason I only gave it a 4 is because my only complaint with this book is that I don't think that the reader can solve it I think that you would have to use such out of this world lateral thinking to get to the why of this mystery. I don't think anybody thinks that way. I don't think that there's enough context to understand why everything happens the way it happens in this book, if that makes sense. Probably my only real complaint is that I didn't feel like I could have solved this mystery before it was explained to me. The actual person responsible, I was very suspicious of, but I also really liked. They were my favorite character, but I was also suspicious that they were the person responsible for what was happening here. I was right, but I felt like I was wrong because I couldn't understand why. When you get the explanation of why, it does make sense. It makes perfect sense. Everything makes sense. There was no way on this earth that I was going to figure out that why on my own without it being explained to me. So that is the only real issue I took with the story and how it's told. I don't even know if that's really a valid complaint. Without rambling on too much longer, I really enjoyed it, Then There Were None. I thought it was a great time. I'd highly recommend it. I probably will reread this because I'm curious, knowing the answers now, if that would change how I interpret things reading it again. So I could see this being a reread probably multiple times. It was a lot of fun. Definitely a great book for like the beach or a vacation or a plane ride or something. All right, sports fan, that's it. That's all I read in the month of March. I almost finished Kaikei. I'm like 60 pages away from the end, but it is April 1st, so that can't be on my March reads. It will have to be in April. Thanks for hanging out.